The more we study the past of Central Asia, the more we know about the great role of this region in the history of world culture. However, ancient history of Central Asia is not adequately and fully covered in sources. The new historical series, Civilizations of Central Asia, will bridge this gap, because the historical mission of Central Asia is to unite, to absorb spiritual impulses of Europe and Asia, and to introduce new creations of human spirit to the world. Watch documentary series Civilizations of Central Asia on Kazakh TV channel. Central Asian civilizations. Alexander the Great in Central Asia. Central Asia is an ancient land which inspired numerous legends and epics over the years. This is the place where the most mysterious secrets of the East are hidden. Many well-known talented people infuse Central Asian countries with their beautiful creations. Our story is about its greatness and mysteriousness. Alexander the Great in Central Asia.
Подробности похода в Среднюю Азию, Персию и Индию смотрите в очередной серии исторического сериала «Цивилизации Средней Азии».
In the early spring of the year 329, after defeating the hard-to-reach snow-covered passes of the Caucasian range, that's how the Greeks called the Hindu Kush, Alexander the Great led campaign on the lands of Central Asia. Bactria occupied the northern part of modern Afghanistan and the southern regions of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan and Tajikistan. It was one of the most important satrapy of the Achaemenid Empire.
И являлась одной из важнейших ахеменидских сатрапий.
The Macedonian king received a hostile greeting in Bactria. The citizens hid the food, and Alexander's soldiers had to slaughter their pack animals. Nevertheless, his army persistently advanced into the interior of the country. On the other hand, things were uneasy on the side of Bessus. As soon as Alexander's army passed the Hindu Kush, many Bactrians left the new Persian king, forcing him to flee to Naltak, behind the Oxus River, modern Amudarya, with the remaining forces. Among the adherents of Bessus were representatives of the local nobility, Spitamen from Sogdiana and Bactrians, Oxyrtus and Datapherne. In Naltak, Bessus burned down all means of crossing the river and began to gather a new army. In the meantime, Alexander approached the first Bactrian city, Drapsaka. After letting his army rest there, he conquered the largest Bactrian cities, Aon and Bactra, where he placed his garrisons in the spring of 330. In order to get to the Oxus River, the Greek Macedonian army had to pass through a waterless desert. This was a difficult journey, and the army had to suffer many hardships. The river was very wide and had an extremely rapid flow. It seemed impossible to pass it without bridges. But Alexander made a decision to cross Oxus using leather bags made from tents and wine skins stuffed with straw. It took them several days to cross to the opposite bank of the river.
Когда он участвовал в сражении отца в 16 лет, да?
When he participated in the battle of his father at the age of 16 and helped his father win the battle, his father Philip said, "This kingdom is not enough for you. Look for a new kingdom for yourself." When he was 20, the Greek cities rebelled against the Macedonian domination. Alexander suppressed these uprisings very harshly, despite the young age. He was already prepared to take the role and responsibilities of a leader. From the very birth, Alexander was treated and brought up like a prince. He received a proper education. At the age of 13, he became a student of a famous Greek scientist, Aristotle. Not only Aristotle was teaching him science, he was convincing him of the need to conquer the East.
Мало того, что он обучал его философским наукам и так далее, он еще нацеливал его на поход на восток.
I'm already 23 and I have not done anything to immortalize my name. Alexander of Macedon. Alexander advanced further into Central Asia and occupied Samarkand, where he apparently didn't meet any resistance. Leaving the garrison here, he moved further north towards Sirdarya River. Along the way, there was a first major clash with the local peoples caused by army foragers' spoliations. The mountain inhabitants killed the latter and gathered in some fortified place, apparently intending to prevent the advance of the conquerors. Alexander stormed this fortress and, according to sources, killed more than 200,000 barbarians. Having reached the banks of Sirdarya, probably in the area of modern Leninabad, Alexander occupied a number of cities and entered into relations with the nomads who lived beyond the river. He sent ambassadors allegedly for the conclusion of a treaty of friendship, but in reality the task was to find out their strength and armament. In these nomadic Saka people, he saw a real threat to his plans of conquering the east. He decided to build a fortified city on the bank of the Sirdarya, which could serve as a stronghold if he ever decides to go beyond the river. These events clearly demonstrated Alexander's true intentions to conquer Central Asia. After this, the Sogdian and Bactrian nobility became more hostile towards intruders and raised an insurrection against them, which involved a wider share of the population. The uprising covered the whole Sogdia region and towns of the Sirdarya located near the Macedonian camp. Those were the first ones to suffer from consequences. Alexander sent his commander Crater against the largest town, Syropolis, while he himself turned against the nearest and less fortified cities. On the first day he took two cities, one of which was called Gaza. The name of the second one is not mentioned in the sources. All men of military age were massacred and the women and children sold into slavery. In the following days, the same fate befell other cities. Syropolis was the last to be conquered. The Macedonians had to besiege its walls using battering rams. While Alexander dealt with the rebellious dwellers of town along Sirdarya, Spitamen, who was one of the active organizers of the uprising in Sogdiana and other areas, besieged the Macedonian garrison in Marakanda. In some sources it says that he even conquered this city. The nomadic population was gathering on the northern bank of the Sirdarya River to support the uprising of the city dwellers. Alexander sent a relatively small detachment to Marakanda and hastily proceeded to build a fortified city on the Sirdarya, which was named Alexandria. It was built in 20 years. The population of the new city was made up of voluntary settlers, Greek mercenaries, Macedonian soldiers who were no longer able to serve in the army, and locals.
Вот представьте, на весь поход от Греции до Индии Александр потратил где-то 6 лет, может чуть больше. Из них 3 года, почти 2 года с лишним.
Alexander's campaign from Greece to India took 6 years, maybe a little more or a little less. 3 out of these 6 years he spent conquering Morovia, which is mainly the territory of modern Uzbekistan. Why so long? Well, because the leader of Sogdians, Spitamen, organized resistance against Alexander. Initially, Spitamen was fighting against Alexander as a soldier of Darius' army. Then there were clashes between Alexander and local tribes, united by Spitamen, Sogdians, Sagas, Massagets. he managed to provide a decent resistance to Alexander on numerous occasions.
Все были объединены под водительством Спитамена, и он не раз оказывал достойное сопротивление Александра. Особенно, когда Александр пошел к Танаису, то же Дарье.
There are myriad of worlds in the universe, yet I haven't conquered even one.
И одного не завоевал.
Alexander of Macedon.
Македонский.
Nomadic suckers kept an eye on whatever was happening on the other bank of the river. They could clearly see the upcoming threat they will be facing in these newly emerged cities, and it wasn't long before they made a first attack. Fully aware that in the current situation the appearance of a large group of Saka people on the left bank will serve as a signal for another uprising, Alexander decided to strike first. His troops were quick to cross the river, covered by the fire from the shore. He managed to defeat the Saka people assembling on this side of the river bank. The Sakas lost about 1,000 soldiers and 150 were taken as prisoners. One of their leaders, Satrak, was among the latter. A rapid and unexpected attack had a very desirable for Alexander effect on nomadic people. An apology was sent to him, declaring that the attacks had been carried out by an independently operating group intending to rob the fortification, and informing him that the People's Assembly had no knowledge of these plans. Alexander graciously accepted the ambassadors and freed the prisoners without ransom, seeking to establish peaceful relations with the Sakas and unleash his hands for further actions in Sogdiana. During all this time, there were important events taking place there. Spitamen had stopped the siege of Marakanda upon arrival of the detachment sent by Alexander, or as stated in other sources, cleared the city and retreated down the valley of Zarafshan to the city of kings in Sogdia. No one knows the exact location of this city. When the news of the fate of the detachment sent to Sogdia reached Alexander, he rushed to Marakanda himself, leaving the garrison he founded in Alexandria on the Sirdarya river behind. When Spitamen spotted Alexander approaching the city, he once again retreated from the city and went down the river again and disappeared into the desert. Alexander made attempts to pursue him, but without success. After devastating the valley of Zarafshan and leaving the garrison in Marakanda, Alexander went to Bactria, where he spent the winter.
Когда Александр пошел к Танаису, то же Дарье.
When Alexander approached Tanais, modern Sirdarya river, he crossed it and entered the battle with the Scythians. This battlefield was on the territory of modern Kazakhstan. That is, when he received news about the uprising organized by Spitamen. He sent his troops there. This army was surrounded and completely crushed on Mian-Karia. It is a district in the Samarkand region. This was the first defeat of Alexander the Great's army.
район Самаркандской области. Это было первое поражение войск Александра Македонского.
The more you have, the greater you strive for what you don't possess. Your war is born from victories. Alexander of Macedon.
Александр Македонский.
The dilapidated army was refilled with reinforcements coming from the west and units formed from local residents. Saka ambassadors from Bactria approached Alexander with the proposal to strengthen friendship with marriages, which was followed by a polite refusal. The king of Khoresm, Pharasman, visited him, accompanied by a detachment of 1,500 horsemen, offering the alliance and his support in case Alexander will plan a campaign against the Amazons and Kolhas living in the vicinity of Pharasman's lands in the northern Black Sea coast. Alexander made a military alliance with him, but he didn't accept the offer for a joint campaign. In the spring of 328, Alexander moved to Sogdia again. The city dwellers, despite the beatings and devastations of 329, gathered in fortified castles and refused to obey the satrap appointed over them. Alexander divided his army into 5 detachments and yet again punished the citizens of Sogdiana with fire and sword. The first stage of this second punitive campaign ended in Marakanda, where all 5 detachments were reunited. Here, Alexander ordered one of his commanders to repopulate the cities of Sogdia, which obviously were depopulated as a result of the events of 329-328. It is not known to us as to how this settlement was made, but based on the data on the order of the settlement of Alexander's newly built cities, we may assume that along with the locals, groups of Greeks and Macedonians who, for whatever reasons, were unfit for further service in the army, were also settling there. Obviously, at the same time, several new cities were laid in Sogdia and Bactria, which were supposed to serve as foundation for the new government. The sources failed to preserve their names, and there are several versions of how many were they. Strabo listed 8 cities, while Pompeius Strogus mentions 12. Strabo listed 8 cities, while Pompeius Strogus mentions 12. The campaign against the Massagetes apparently was not crowned with success. The only result of it was the Spitamen's sudden invasion to Bactria with a detachment of Massagete horsemen, taking over a small fortification and killing the Macedonian garrison inside of it. Spitamen approached Zariaspa. The Macedonian garrison was ambushed as they were coming out of the city and defeated. After an unsuccessful battle, Spitamen was forced to go back to the desert.
Македонские ветераны, они устали от войны. И в частности, около Самарканда произошло восстание этих македонских, греко-македонских ветеранов, которые
Macedonian veterans were tired of wars. Near Samarkand, Greek Macedonian veterans rebelled, demanding a return to their homeland. During the feast, Alexander killed his closest friend, Crete. He began to pursue veterans who demanded to return home. They didn't want to fight anymore. Alexander faced the threat of war with local tribes and the war with his own army.
И перед угрозой войны с местными племенами и перед угрозой восстали его верные ветераны.
Wars depend on glory, they bring, and oftentimes a lie that was believed in becomes the truth. Alexander of Macedon. Fearing his appearance in Sogdia, Alexander singled out a special unit to monitor Spitamen's actions and, if possible, ambuscade him. Spitamen did appear on the border of Sogdia after some time, leading 3,000 nomads. A fierce battle took place near the fortified station Baga, which ended with the victory of Macedonians. Sogdians and many of the Bactrians surrendered to the victors, and the nomads, plundering their wagons, went into the desert, taking Spitamen with them. When they heard that Alexander intends to invade the desert, they killed Spitamen and sent his head to Alexander.
Роль Спитамина как организатора сопротивления жителей Согды и македонскому завоеванию была, несомненно, очень...
The role of Spitaman as the organizer of the peoples of Sogdia and Bactria resistance to the Macedonian conquest was undoubtedly very great. He was one of the first leaders to realize that Alexander won't provide a liberation from Persian power and the restoration of independence, but instead is planning to get the power over these lands himself. Spitaman managed to involve not only the nobility, but all the peoples living in the region. This can be the only explanation for the stubborn and fierce nature of the struggle and the devastation and extermination of the inhabitants that Alexander performed in Sogdia in 329 and 328. The death of Spitaman didn't mean the end of the struggle. This is evidenced by the fact that in 328-327 Alexander was forced to spend the winter in Naftag, apparently fearing a new uprising in the valley of Zarafshan. Realizing that he alone cannot subordinate Sogdiana by force of arms, he tried to get closer to the local nobility. Apparently, some families of the local nobility did turn to Alexander's side.
Сюда бежало много сагдийцев, очевидно, участников восстания.
This is where the family of one of the Spitaman's associates, Oxyatus, found shelter as well. The rock was impregnable and it had a large supply of food. However, its defenders were forced to surrender soon after the siege began, as the Macedonian squad managed to climb to the top of the mountain and go to their rear. Among the captured prisoners was the daughter of Oxyatus, Roxanne. She was considered to be one of the most beautiful women in Asia. She drew Alexander's attention, and in a short time Alexander and Roxanne were married. This step, clearly made in line with his policy of befriending local nobility, had important consequences. Roxanne's father soon came to Alexander and was greeted with great respect. The fall of the Sogdian rock and Oxyatus joining Alexander's side are obviously the last stage of Sogdia's organized resistance.
Вот он увидел совершенно других людей, там развито земледелие, благоухают эти города, сады, все такое. И, конечно, он был
The people he saw were completely different. Developed agriculture, flourishing cities, developing society. He was shocked. 4th century BC. The mentality of the Greeks was gradually expanding as they moved to the east. They saw that civilizations exist not only in Greece. There is another world on which other people live and live better than them. All this was a shock to the young Alexander, but he accepted it. He attempted to unite the peoples of different civilizations by marrying Roxanne, the daughter of one of the local leaders. The warrior said that she was the second most beautiful woman of the East after Darius' wife.
После жены Дария, это была самая красивая женщина на Востоке.
It's bad enough to be defeated in a battle with foreign warriors, but it's even worse to be defeated by foreign women. Alexander of Macedon. In the summer of 327, after completing his campaign in the mountainous regions of Central Asia, Alexander left to Bactria and began preparations for Indian campaign. Two remaining major associates of Spitaman operating in Peritakia were defeated in his absence. At the same time, one of Alexander's commanders conquered Burbasan region, which perhaps should be sought in the medieval Kutal, modern Kulab region. The conquest of Central Asia took Alexander more than 2.5 years. The conquered territory was relatively small, Sogdia, Bactria, and a small part of the mountainous regions. Nomadic tribes remained independent, as did Khoresm. However, Alexander's conquest of Central Asia had resulted in matters of different nature. Passing over the lands and villages of the rebels to the representatives of the aristocracy who allied with him, Alexander strengthened the landowners' nobility and strengthened its power. Building new cities in Western manner, leaving Greeks and Macedonians to inhabit them, he introduced a new element in the society of the agricultural oasis of Central Asia. This was the vehicle for developing slave-owning relations. Alexander transferred the ownership rights over the prisoners captured during the victory over the centers of uprisings to settlers of new cities. This created the economic basis for their existence. These events could not but affect the course of social development. They undoubtedly strengthened slave-owning relations and contributed to the expansion of the scope of slave labor use. The invasion of the Greek Macedonian army and the fierce struggle with the conquerors, which lasted more than 2 years, had serious consequences for the agricultural oasis of Central Asia, especially for Sogdiana. Devastation accompanied by the extermination of the population, led by Alexander in 329 and 328 BC on the territory of the Zarafshan Valley, caused significant damage to the country. It probably took several years to restore what was left of it. We'll reveal more in our next episodes.